Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus3 Futures and Commodities Show. My name is Ben Maldonado, and as always, I'm here with my partner, Barrie. On today's show, we're going to block out all the noise, forget about all the news, focus on the charts, and give you the levels that tell you where the market's going to go. Barrie, it's what we do all the time, but I think I had to bring it up because I was just fascinated by how everyone all week was focused first on this report and then that report and then Powell's speech and Jackson Hole. That was the big thing. And
Right.
now it's come and gone. And what are they going to obsess about next?
Exactly. And it's never ending, by the way.
Never ending. And it's really interesting because you can feel the hype building up into that release.
Hmm.
And then they restart the hype into the next one. Okay, well, CPI was this, but now we're going to the unemployment report. And now it's this guy speaking. It's now this person speaking. So we know that it doesn't help to focus on those things. There is a lot of energy that gets released around them,
Hmm.
but you got to know the levels, right? That's the key. You got to know the levels going into it so you know what to do and what the market's likely to do when they get crossed.
Absolutely. And that's why we stick with technical analysis, Gann analysis specifically,
Hmm.
because it helps us stay focused on what's actually happening versus, all the Powell speech and that number and this number that's coming up and how people are going to react to that, right? So,
That's exactly right.
yeah, let's get back to basics, not get lost in the noise.
Exactly. And
So,
and what we're seeing here is we're coming up in an important spot.
very important. And it's funny, it's almost like somebody hit pause because we were pretty much in the same place last week because we talked about 55.66 being the key level to watch. And if we settle above that, we're going to try to push higher. And if we can't get above 55.66, we're probably going to do something else,
Hmm.
at least check out the lower levels. So what ended up happening was we ended up, holding up above 55.66. And I mean, the challenge here was fairly easy. If 55.66 was held, we were looking for a test of 56.82. And then we went through a couple of different scenarios. How can we, if we're going to call this high, the 90-week high, along with a bunch of other, cycles that expired there. And, if that's the case, we're still, until that high gets taken out, we're still following the storyline along with those cycles. So if that's the
Hmm.
case, as long as that high is in place, we have to treat this other movement sort of as a counter trend. And that's what we covered last week and probably the week before that. So this week, we're pretty much in the same zone and pretty much in the same space in relation to the high because we haven't taken it out. We haven't quite turned down. We held the space, sort of did a wide triangle and not much movement. So, this is where everybody is waiting for the news and so forth and so on. Okay, let's take it to the next. Let's move it on to the next week and see what we have to do. Being that we really didn't make a lot of movement, we're still in the same place. So we still have to watch 55.66 for support and 56.82 for resistance. And we're still going to keep an eye on some of the scenarios we talked about last week, including a potential false break happening later
At
in the
the
week,
high. Yep.
at the high later in the week, next week. So these are all sort of in the cards. Okay, so one of the things that happened today, we talk about inside days and what happens, when the high gets taken out, low gets taken out. So we ended up Friday with the inside bar. Can you believe that, Ben?
It's
Uh,
amazing. And I think that's going to be our topic at the end of the show is how to look at inside bars and find the edge there.
find the edge. Oh, that's a good topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that we ended the week with the inside bar means there is a high probability that we can break from sort of the consolidation we had this week and move on, you know?
Hmm.
So we'll take a look at that also. What else is happening? What else is happening? Let's drop back to the calendar day chart. This is for the cash chart, SPX. And here we looked at a few things last week. One was, this 55.82 I typed in. I said, look, we really, if we can't get above that, we're probably going to trade lower. But if we can hold above it, then 56.72 is the next target. So what happened was we managed to get above and hold above. So the push is still to the upside. We really didn't get any reversals, and everybody is comfortably numb up here. Now what's coming up is, this is interesting. All right. So we're going off of this 90 because that's the one that really squared out, and
Yep.
we had a
And we
decent
got a
reaction.
reaction.
Yeah,
Yep.
we had a decent reaction. And so let's see. And that low really didn't have a whole lot of let's just say like a completion. So I feel like there could be more downside. So how do we handle that? Well, we look for evidence. And one of the couple of things that are coming up, we have 20, half of 45, 90, 45, 22 and a half. So we
Mhm.
have a 22, 22 and a half coming up August 27th, 28,
It's
28,
Tuesday, Wednesday. Yep. Next
Tuesday,
week.
Wednesday. So it could go to, could be Wednesday, Thursday, but we have to really
Hmm.
watch that. These are in solar degrees coming
Hmm.
off of the low. And that would keep in with the theme, right? Theme of, we did 45 from this pullback to the high.
Hmm.
We, so there's a lot of things happening there. We could also do 36 to the high today, but that's 36 really doesn't quite fit in. But I think if we do 45, that'll get us up into right. So if you do that, now we extend it all the way out to 31st. Okay.
Yep.
So
Hmm.
somewhere between, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have a number of time cycles lining up, especially this 45 high to high is really important. And 22 and a half low to high is not bad. On top of that, from the low we had in April, we'll have a 135 going
You
up
have a
into that same
135.
window,
Yep.
the
Yep.
same window. And normally we only need one count to see how that cycle finishes up, because it doesn't have to be so complicated.
Sure.
So this is why we're thinking that the window for some kind of a continuation of a down move is there. Okay. Now, how do we know if it's not there? Yeah, that the market's going to rally up another a couple thousand points? Well, it's very easy. We want to see that it's holding about 55.82. Long as we're doing that, basis the cash, the push is to test 56.73, and if we get on top of that, well, we're going to go higher, probably 6,000.
Yep.
Signs we're watching are really the levels like Ben mentioned earlier. So we're looking at 55.82, 56.73 on the cash. And we know we have some time windows coming up. Let's just say Wednesday, Thursday, and we'll have to deal with it as it comes.
Yeah. And if you remember, Barry, I had that late August, early September window from a whole another different cycle set. And so there's a lot that's coming in play here in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's fair to say next week we're in the window and we need to start watching the technicals really,
Mhm.
really closely.
Exactly.
Whether
And the
we get
easiest,
whether we get a lower high or we get a false break high or something, we really got to watch and see if there are any reversal patterns or the bars show us that it's a weak high or things are turning.
yeah, and that brings up another good point. The thing is, time windows are great, but the thing is, time windows can be off a little bit because of all the little wobbles that happens in the universe. So,
Yep,
but
that's correct.
right, but the price has no wobble. Price is fairly clear, and pattern is fairly clear. So price and pattern is a good way to lead the analysis and let the time windows come in and cycles expire as they may. But using the levels will help us stay focused on what's important instead of
Hmm.
chasing this time and the other time. All right, so that's for the cash. What else do we have? I wanted to show you this. Geometry always comes
Oh,
in.
look at that. That's
Mm.
nice.
Mm-hmm. Now, this one I did quickly when we were started to, we were selling off a couple of weeks ago. I was trying to figure out, well, what would be a reasonable support level.
Hmm.
And just by, working with the geometry, I came up with 49.22.
Right?
All right. So, no joke. It's a very important balance point for this leg. And so ideally, if we can hold above, below this, the arc, the
Hmm.
circle, I mean, it would be beautiful, right? It would be perfect. Now, if we go for a false break, obviously we're going to take out the circle, and so this wouldn't be valid. But I think, a little peak above that is okay, given that geometry might not be perfect. But I'm watching this to see. This is another, price geometry pattern that I'm watching. These circles have helped us in the past. Especially, I remember it helped us with crude oil and, well, number of markets, right?
And bonds. Yep.
Bonds. So circles are okay, not by themselves, but we want to look at other elements that are there to support that. But anyway, so that's there. And if that all works out, I don't think coming back down into visit the 5,000 or even the lower is out of the question, up until we're satisfied that, hey, we settled above all the resistance and we're moving higher. All right. So now dropping into the Dow, I had dropped this resistance level at 41,348. Now we had a 180. We're holding this really well, almost a little too perfectly. Yeah. And I feel like it's it's kind of like here, what happened here. We had 90. You can see how price kind of respected that all the way through for months and months, right? Then we got above, but it wasn't quite, ready to move. And, eventually it rattled around and broke down, did an ABC down after the flush, took out these lows. And then we, the second time around that it started to move. And why am I showing that? The point here is, once we clear one of these key areas, if we don't move right away like we did here, it's possible that it's sort of waiting around to flush everybody before it moves. This is just a take, right? Just to be cautious. So I feel like we had plenty of time to run, and we chose not to. So I'm kind of wondering if we can't really clear this and get above 41,348 and really run up. I mean, real next big resistance areas up here, 44,300 to 43,000, let's say 200, in this area. And so if we can clear this, we can run up there in a hurry. There's no problem. But the fact that we haven't, and we're kind of pulling a pattern like here, I'm just thinking, there could be a pullback to clear up some of these, how they do. We clear up the weak hands, right? Before there's a move higher.
Like I always say, think like a criminal.
I'm definitely thinking like a criminal through here. Like, what could go wrong, right?
Right.
What could go right? So long as we're above the 180, fine. That's 42.37. And okay, fine, we can deal with that. And long as we're below 41,348, well, that's the bracket, and you guys can see how we've been there for almost a month, maybe more. So that these brackets don't hold forever. So we're trying to plan out, well, what happens if the high goes? Then this is up in here will be the next resistance area, let's say 43,100 or so. And if we lose the 180 and start slipping, then if we take out the 38,337, I think then there's a bigger move coming to probably test out these areas. I know it's kind of odd to speak extremes on both sides, but we're in a cycle where these things can happen. And I think it's good to have your eyes open on these things. Getting back to the E-mini, we talked about the possibilities, we talked about the levels. So I think it's fairly clean. I don't want to overcomplicate it when actually what we have to do for the next week is fairly simple.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add before I move on to the weekly?
Just that on my daily, 5604 is important because it's a half square. And if we get caught under that, it's going to be difficult for the bulls. And the same thing is if we hold above that, so it's a few points above yours, but if we hold above that, it opens up 5,900.
Yeah. Certainly to the upside, it opens up above 6,000. I mean, that's the next half square, and these things work pretty well. Let me jump on to the 30-minute because we're always kind of a tradition now. We kind of look at that. Then I'll come back to the weekly chart and look at that because there's some really clean things happening on the weekly chart.
You can see the triangle there a lot better on the 30 that's been forming.
Yes, we can see that. And also, we picked out this And if you guys are watching, watching every week, you'll know, we picked out this 56.29 a while back and looking at that to be sort of resistance. And if you notice what happens with our levels is if it gets there and doesn't turn back right away, it becomes sort of a sticky point and it price starts to build value around that level.
Mm-hmm.
And it ends up becoming sort of a mean reversion point. This one was no different. I mean, look how we got there on the 19th, just wrapping around that 20th, 21st, 22nd. And, we moved up, crisscross, came down, back on up, back down, back up. So
Right.
it's all wrapping around 56.29. And I feel like since it's keeping the momentum, not in a great way, but it's kind of keeping it okay. Let's just say it's okay, which means it looks like it really wants to go up and tap this 56.75.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the level we were watching this week to see if we can get up there. And if we went below that, you guys can see the half square using quarter to, using the quarters.
Mm-hmm.
We had 55.85. I mean, the big bracket this week was 55.85, 56.75, and the midpoint obviously is 56.29.
And it perfectly bracketed price action.
It perfectly bracketed. And you guys know we just use this chart all the time. These things don't get moved every week. And so the bracket was good. So everything is good. This is what I mean. When everything's perfectly working, we just want to keep it simple and just follow through. And so for next week, that's the idea. We want to continue to watch 56.75. And this is basis the 30-minute, but you can use it at 4-hour, hourly. It would work out just fine. And also 55.85. Now, because of the cycles we talked about on the cash chart, you remember that? We talked about this, no, it's on the other set.
Okay.
Remember we talked about the 22.5s and the 45s and the 36, 135. Well, because of those cycles coming in, we really want to watch this bracket next week. If we take out 55.85, for example, on a time where there are no cycles, then we can say, well, that's a normal pullback, support holds, and then we run the other way, which is what it did. Now, if next week, let's say we somehow, one scenario is, let's say we hang out up here going into Wednesday, Thursday, that time window, and we test out 56.75, maybe peak a little above, then we reverse and take out 56.29, and we somehow can't get above like we did, yesterday. We dropped down and did a little false break action, came back and couldn't get above and reversed and went down to 55.85. So if we get that type of action below 56.29, that could be the first sort of the yellow flag, right? Like, okay, something's up. And if we take out 55.85 next week, okay, that's like 2 yellow flags.
Right.
And if we take out 55.39, I would say
it's over short term.
Over the highs in place, very high probability that we're going to go lower into September. So we're going to watch it like that and let the price level sort of dictate what happens. And we're going to watch the price action around that. Is that good, Ben?
That's clear. No,
Sure.
It's you got the levels. Now let's watch price around them and we'll know what's more likely to happen.
Exactly. All right. Let's take a look at the weekly, which is the other big one.
That's a big one. You and I were talking about that earlier in the week.
56.72 is a level we had marked off. And sure enough, we came right up into it and tapped it, the 50% of the square. We have if we count the low 1, 2, 2 week,
2 bars up. Yeah.
2 bars up. Can we go one more? Sure. 3 would be just about perfect. So a couple of things to watch on the weekly. Here's like the very practical way to look at this. Because we have those other daily cycles expiring next week, midweek, if we somehow take out this week's low, we have a reversal and it's happening while the daily cycles are active.
The cycle window is open. Yep.
Open and price actions following through. So if we take out this week's low, we can expect more downside price action. If we somehow settle above 56.72, I would say the cycle gets pushed a little bit. We'll have to wait till Friday to see what happens. So 56.72 settling above that is the thing on a weekly basis. But we already covered the daily daily levels and 30 minutes. So you guys are fully up to date on all those levels, what to do with those. And this is just sort of the bigger picture of what we're dealing with. And here, there's really just one level. Let's see if we can get above that and hold above or not. And the other way we're going to use it is to see if the low of this week is taken out, even an outside reversal. Certainly, we can pop up there and take out the low, right? Outside reversal. Well, we had one at the high. It's the same deal. You see that, Ben? We had
Yeah.
high bar. Next week, we came up, made a false break, reversal, and then down.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's too much to ask to give us a false break and a reversal next week.
Not too much. Somebody loves to do that.
Right.
So here we did the same thing. We had a high inside bar, outside bar reversal. Here, the same thing, outside bar reversal. See that?
Mhm.
So it's not unusual. What else can we talk about? The weekly. Yeah, I think that's about it. I think when there's a lot of news and a lot of noise, it's important to keep things simple without adding to it. So I think that's a clean read on markets.
Agreed.
And yeah, thank you. Okay, so if you guys like our work, please remember to subscribe, share, like, what else? Comment.
Comment. Yeah, sure. Comments.
Comments have been really good because we're hearing what you guys want to see. And there are a lot of, you guys have come up with a lot of different charts to look at. And Ben and I were talking today about maybe doing a midweek drop, like maybe Wednesday.
A shorter show on Wednesday.
Yeah, like a Tuesday, Wednesday, shorter show, like 30 minutes maybe, but to cover all the things that you guys want to see. Because adding to this is just going to make it longer. We can't really do 2 hours.
We don't want to be a Joe Rogan 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, and you guys will be falling half asleep.
Right. Right.
So, and it's just easier to break it up and do it in two instead of just one shot. So we're going to do that probably starting next week. You'll see.
Yeah.
We'll keep you posted. And yeah, thanks for all the likes. And
if you get the alerts, you'll be notified.
Yes. Early on, right? As soon
Yep.
as we drop these things.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to bonds.
It's a great picture of the E-mini. We got the levels. You see on a weekly basis, daily basis, how important this next time frame is going to be in these price levels. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, and we have some kind of a scenario too, right? We have we cover both sides. We know what to look for. We kind of talked about the bias and why. So it's I feel like it's about as complete as I can make it in 10 minutes.
No, it's good. It's very good.
Well, bonds are exactly.
Speaking of triangles.
Speaking of triangles and squares,
right?
We are 72 by 216 bars, which just happens to be a square. We triangulated into that. Not my favorite way to get into a square out, but price did get there. And now what do we have in the bonds today? We have inside bar. So you guys, if you're watching next week, if we take out the high and somehow manage to settle above 125, looks like we're going to go higher. Okay. So that's, really the 125 is what you want to watch. We talked about 128 being sort of a buffer into the square, and see what happens. See, that's exactly what happened. If you count the 5 bars, we got in here for 4 of the bars, right? And we stuck between that 1 point range. And that's the thing. So next week, if we take out the low of today, we automatically take out 124. So then that opens up the downside and kind of cements in the idea that, we might have scored this out.
The vision I have with that price action going right into the time cycle is everybody's been on a beach when you see the shift between low and high tide. That's what that price action looks like to me, where it's not going out. It's not coming. The tide's not going out. It's not coming in. It's what they call that slack tide.
Slack tide, yeah.
And that's exactly what that price action looks like.
And that's kind of what happens when price reaches its key levels in squares. If it doesn't respond right away, if it's going to go higher, there's a little bit of a slack tide kind of a thing. And usually not every time, but it'll spend some time just going back and forth, which is kind of what we did here in a very tight range. Let's see if we can push higher. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
If otherwise, so watch the inside bar. I think that's the easiest clue for the next 5 bars that are going to come up to just use the bar from today. And you guys have the 124, 125 to go by for next week. Easy.
And what happens in bonds is a big influence on what happens in the dollar, which is going to have a big influence on risk markets and commodities. It's all, it's a domino effect. So get bonds right and you can get everything else right.
Yeah, you get the rates right. It's
makes
it life a lot easier.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, though, right now, looking at everything, it's if this was juggling, all the balls are up in the air.
Right.
Everything's up in the air, and it's
Right.
a super interesting time to be watching everything.
Mm-hmm.
So here's our weekly bond chart. It's funny. You could look at the daily. Let me just go back for a second. This is just interesting. Now, to remember this high and the higher low. Okay, Ben.
Right.
Now, if you switch back to the daily, we have a high and a lower high, which squared out, which is pretty much what happened on the weekly on the reverse down here.
The inverse of that.
Right?
Yep.
And normally, just so you guys know, if a market makes a higher high and a lower high into the square, it's a little bit questionable if it's really squaring out or not. It really is. So here we can say, well, it's meeting price and time, but it's not the first time,
Right.
So it's a little bit questionable, but that's why we want to cover both sides. If it goes down, we look at it like this. If it goes higher, then obviously there's another square that's working. Makes sense, right? Cover it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's a good view of
every week.
It's a good view of how the smaller time frames fit into the bigger time frames. The wheels within wheels type of thing that Gann always talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of that, what's happening in the S&P. We talked about those smaller 22.5 and 45, 135s kicking into next week, which would be perfect, right? In the bigger turn down. Anyway, looking at the weekly, we had this 144 by 216. And reluctantly, I had to end up calling that a square. We got the lower, higher low. We started moving higher. So we've been looking for it to go higher, especially after we broke out this triangle. And we dropped this ABCD just for fun, but boy, it might just be the thing. That's at 132.
Yeah.
128.07 is sort of a midpoint of this box, which was a lot of overhead that we had put in, back in 23. And that helped us, isolate this high, and that's what sold off into the 216 weeks mark. So I think it's still in play. Let's see what happens when we get near 128.07 if we get there. I think that's all I have for the weekly. We covered bonds enough.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's look at crude.
Boy, just when people start planning the funeral for crude, it turns around.
Turns around a little bit, looks back.
And that's what's called a trading zone, right? Where you're in a trading range.
And the thing is, we really didn't break to one side or the other at 73.5. I mean, here, what was it? The Wednesday, Thursday, we basically just went down reverse, really no big push down, not a lot of selling coming in. But what he did was do a little false break. So, and this is a good follow after a false break. Again, I think above 73.5, we have to look on the long side till we get to 79.50. Now, if it gets below 73.50, again, we're going to have to hit the pause and wait to see what happens.
Agreed.
Only because, technically we're going sideways, so I don't know if it's the best time to be short crude, not just technically, but also fundamentally. But trading off of 73.50 is okay to the long side because of the compression. And we talked about the last couple of weeks how on the long-term charts, how the lows have held. So indicating the break could be to the upside, right? That's why we're sort of poised that way. Right, Ben?
It's killing people because it's staying in this wide range. And, either if you buy strength, you've lost. And if you sell weakness, you've lost in this market.
Exactly. So you have to definitely go level to level.
Yep.
And we're just cleared 73.50. So now you guys know what to do. All right, let's move on to the weekly crude chart. And this has been our sort of the bigger map, so we don't get lost in the noise. And you can see how we're definitely pushing the lower boundaries of this. The triangle's
Yes.
still there, but the
Yep.
triangle's really kind of getting pushed. I'm still going to keep these 2 points and act like this is getting pushed to the downside. And the upside is fairly clean. The last move up held the upper line.
Hmm.
And I remember dropping this box, I don't know, gosh, a few months
Months
back.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, months and months ago about, how this is really the focus is going to be in here. And it was. And you can see the midpoint of that. It's really a quarter of a square. So the midpoint of that is 81.25. And then we have the bracket. So nothing new here. We're along the lower line. So 73.50 is just about right there. And until we really settle under that, even, basis the weekly, until we get below 73.50, I mean, what are you going to do? Sell it into the support at 66, So I don't
Right.
know. I'm from my perspective, it's too much risk to be short Crude at this point, unless you're day trading or something. It's fine.
Hmm.
But all this pushing and not really. I mean, let's see. It's still winding up. The triangle's still active, and Ben and I've been talking about. Really the time to trade this is not when the triangle's compressing, but when it's releases. We get some
Yeah,
directional move. So we're waiting
exactly.
for that. And yeah, that's all for Crude.
Yep. Been the star recently.
Yep. And it was pausing exactly at the 180 level. We talked about it last week,
Hmm.
how that's resistance. And sure enough, and if you guys, I don't know how somebody can ignore using Gann charts. If you just look at this gold chart, you can see how we went to resistance. We got support here, banged around right up into the next
Into
level.
resistance. Yep.
It's beautiful.
Hmm.
So now, again, we're at a critical point. Was all of this critical points? No, not really. The critical point is, it's the square of 60, so we're up 3 squares, 180. So 25.50 really is the level we need to either settle above or not. So long as we're below that, well, they'll expect more chop.
Yeah.
But it's very strong, like these corrections are very, very tight. And so the market feels like it wants to go higher. And if you look at this, look at this sort of I don't know, call it ascending triangle or a narrowing triangle, but this is
Hmm.
kind of a consolidation too, right?
Hmm.
So these kind of triangles, what happens is they'll go up and they'll eventually break, and then you have a correction. So watch out for that. I think gold, if we mess around in here and not really be able to get above, um, let's say 2,600, which is where this triangle sort of narrows, right? Ends up. So if we break through the lower line, we could have a decent correction, maybe down into the 50%, 24.30 or so.
Hmm.
Only because that's kind of how they break. So keep an eye on that. Other than that, um, it's still in that slack tide we just talked about
Yeah.
until we get above 25.52. So I think the run is there. Now we have to wait to see how it opens up the rest of the box.
Hmm.
Looking at the weekly gold, it's on fire.
Off to the races. Yep.
The great thing is we called all this out perfect. I mean, we've been bullish ever since we started publishing, and this was really interesting to watch this for a couple of months, right, Ben? Because it was
Oh, yeah.
compressing,
Yep. Yep.
and we were really looking for it. It looked like, because of the pattern, that it was going to break out above this 270 degrees up. And sure enough, a couple of weeks ago, that's what happened. What kind of bar is this? Inside bar. We talked about the high getting taken out.
Yep.
There's the move. So basis the weekly, I mean, we still have room to go. Look at that, 2,600.
2,600. Yep.
And that's where we saw that triangle maxing out, right, on the daily
That's
basis.
correct. Yep.
So I would say that 2,600 is going to be important to watch. And the correction back down to, I mean, gosh, even come to 24, it's just a healthy place to buy, if anything, right?
Absolutely.
Even if it's a flush to scare everybody, 2,400 seems reasonable at this point, especially since the corrections have been so tight. But either way, that's kind of where we are. Anything you want to add to gold, Ben? I know you watch it. Gold.
Yeah.
Live.
For me, between the weekly and the monthly, I have like a nice bracket: 25.40 support, 25.75 resistance,
All right, let's move on to copper.
which also started looking better.
Yeah, yeah, it's starting to move. Got a little expanding triangle going on.
Hmm.
So not much. I think the idea was, long as we're above this 406 level, it's in a stronger position to rally and actually test, let's say 430. And ABCD more or less completed, not exactly, but we did do, one square in time in the correction. We came down uh, roughly 60 bars. So I think the low could be in, and
Hmm.
the flush was okay. It was held all together pretty well. Um, so yeah, I think on long as we're holding above this little, like say 413, long side is okay up until the next square of the level. Now, if we once we get above this, I think it opens up. It'll tell us a lot more.
Yeah. Yep. Even better if the pullback can sit on top of that full square, that 60.
Yeah, come back here and test it, and then
Yeah.
come do the
And then
ABCD up.
reverse. Yeah.
Yeah, at least it managed to get above the square, and now it's
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
little bit in a stronger place. Let's take a look at the weekly, which is also, right at the. This is why getting up into that square would be nice because
Yeah.
because the 144 up from that low, it just happens to be 423, and the upside really opens up once we get above that. So let's watch what happens.
Yep.
I think maybe that's what the expanding triangle is about. It'll build up some energy before we can break out. So
Agreed.
we'll watch it.
Yep.
The
The
dollar.
dollar, where we finally got some action.
Mm-hmm. And in that always unexpected direction
Yeah,
for me.
exactly. No, I was with you. I thought
Yeah,
the
yeah.
triangle would break up and we broke down.
Well, dollars, I think it's good to spend a couple of minutes and look at it. What happened was, we came up into the high. High was good. We finished it up with the ABCD. And then we kind of went sideways. You can see how we started to make lower highs while it was coiling up in the bigger triangle, right? And then
Yeah.
we dropped this line in here at 103.80, 82 level, which if it was held even after a false break, it would have been a good place to find support. But the dollar, what happened was after the false break, we really didn't have sort of the fall, the strong move in the other direction that you expect.
No.
And that was like the first tell. And we came around the second time. And we talk about this, when a false break fails, if it gets going to the other side, it's definitely going to go lower. And
Hmm.
then we broke it, moved lower, 50% of the square. All right, fine. We hit the ABCD, very tempting, but it really couldn't get off of that. And we talked several times about what happens when ABCD gets taken out. Like it kind of looks like it completed, but then it trades lower. Then there's a lot more to go, right, Ben? So that's kind of
That's
what happened here. I'm
absolutely.
surprised it's getting this week, but last week we talked about, if we take these. Actually, we talked about that last week, but the 102.30
Hmm.
ABCD area gets taken out, we can expect, to
It's
get,
going to move.
yeah, it's going to move. And the next text is really this sort of the 1 point range here between 99.50 and 150.
Hmm.
That's kind of what we're looking at. And if we're going to go full, finish, really do this proper, we can get down to 99, 98, 96 level and do the 60 degrees down. Also do a false break over here and then begin to move higher again. So looks like we're down, and I feel like, let's move on to the weekly because I saw the weekly and I couldn't help.
See that ABCD setting up?
Well, ABCD setting up, and also the fact that this could be a false break.
Could. It absolutely could.
Special, oh, you mean this big ABCD, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, everything's on the plate now. You're talking about rates, all this stuff is linked, could be linked to rates.
Yeah.
And if that gets, let's just say, dislodged somehow or some kind of a surprise, and this would end up becoming a false break. Because this kind of a triangle breaking to the downside, man, we could end up, down in 93.70 down in here,
Sure.
which I can't imagine, but I suppose is possible. Anything's possible, right?
Right.
So let's see how that works out. For now, we're looking at this 96, 98.25 area, and a quarter square comes in right about in here. Well, let me turn it on so you can see.
Also, if you do the ABCD in the triangle, it gets you into that 98 area too. So you have a few targets that are in that area.
Just a quarter square, which held over here, back in 23.
Mm-hmm.
That level would be right about 99.90, let's say. So that bracket, the brackets or the levels we had on the daily works out perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were to lose that, it opens up a lot, 98 all the way down into 97, which would be interesting. But I'm still looking at this being sort of a false break coming off of the triangle. If that's the case, basis the weekly, the real head turner would be to have a reversal on a weekly bar at one of these levels. So we'll watch for that. And that's about all for the dollar. You want to add anything or?
No,
Right?
I think you covered it.
Yeah, we'll wait to see what happens. On the other hand, we have the euro breaking up above the square, 144 level, up from the low in September of 22. I mean, that's the level we've been going off of, worked fairly well.
Look at that perfect test of the square too. After
Yeah,
it
right
made
there, right?
Yeah,
I think we talked
really
about it
nice.
last week, saying, "Hey, we did have a retest of the
Yeah.
square, and it reversed. We took the high of that low bar out, so it kind of opened up the next square up,
Mm-hmm.
and with the target being, 1367, 13100, right? Let's say
Right.
1300,
Mm-hmm.
13097 would be, to be exact, would be the 50%. And that would give us a false break above the high we had back in July of 2023.
Yep.
Yeah, let's see. It looks like that's the direction, and it's very strong. Look at the directional move, right? This is not messing around. So it's breaking out strong. And so half square is the next level.
You're also coming into some timing there too. Look, in a
Yep.
couple weeks, right?
That's right around the high that we talked about for
The first few days of September. There you
Yep,
go.
September 2nd. So it's right at the end of the month. Early September is, something could happen there because
Mm-hmm.
it's showing up in a lot of places.
It sure is.
See how it shows up. And we'll get, we can get a little bit tighter in how, what levels and everything as we get there. Every day helps. On the weekly euro, it's fairly clean. Here, the triangle broke to the upside, and we kept talking about the 108 being the key level all through actually the entire year almost. And there we can see how, we check back to the 108 on the 4th, August 4th, week of the August 4th, and then we started to move higher. Well, the 90 degrees up would be 13,144, right in that range. And tapping that would be, would be kind of a classic move, getting right above, little above that, maybe 113.73, right in there, right above 90, give us a false break here, and then, trade lower. I think that's kind of what I'm seeing. Let's see, up until it gets above 90 and settles above 90, we'll have to just go with the fact that it's going to go and hit tap 90. Good way to look at it.
It's good levels.
Support wise is 110.950. It's a key level. So we can bang here, come back. If it's holding above that, I would say there's definitely still more upside left. So we finally broke out last week, and there's good follow through. Do I think this is a false break? Yeah, I do.
Right.
But let's see what really happens. I don't have to, thinking doesn't trade. So we have to go with what's actually happening on the charts. And it looks like that's what's happening. Yeah. So let's just go with that and see how it works out. What else? Are you covering natural gas? Not much to look at.
No, not much to look at yet. Let's see if we get a higher low. We can reverse here.
It's holding, it's holding its own. 192, about 192. It's fairly stable. It's the problem is if we take out this low down here, around 150. So, so far it's putting in a beautiful sort of a bottom. And if it doesn't mess it up, I think it'd be a good trade. Something doesn't mess it up.
Yeah.
So far it looks good. What else left? Hang Seng, we finally got above the 50% of the square, which is really the marker we've been watching through this entire process. We had the quarter square up here that the dotted red line, guys. So that's worked out fairly well. 18,054 was another key level. So all of that, Price got through all of that, came back down to the lows. And then, when it gets, when price gets through a 50% of the square, you really want to see, is it going to be able to hold above, or was it just sort of a push, momentum push or
Mhm.
flush going into it? And looking at how it gaps down below, it really looks like more of a flush and a termination point. And if that's the case, we want to see it recover that 50% right away, which it did. So it looks like Hang Seng, it did all the technical things correctly. It's holding above the 50%. Now, moving above 18,054 is another story, but long as we're holding above here, I think it's firming up, and it's there's good support right under it. So
It
that's
looks
what I
good.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it looks
yeah, it
good.
looks it's okay. Take a big hit.
Constructive.
Yeah, I mean, plus it didn't take a big hit like the Japanese markets or the European markets, with the
Mm-mm.
big thing happened a couple of weeks ago. Well, that's all I got, Ben.
Excellent.
Thank you. We'll let me put it back to you. What
Yeah,
do
we
you
just
got?
have a couple commodities to cover.
Okay.
Silver, same as last week, but a new one that's popped up is cotton.
Yeah, well, cotton, we got to watch.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, 50, there's something to be said for these 50%. I mean, look, we talked about it last week, and bam, there it is.
Woof.
It
Right,
felt
right
like a
into
rock.
it. Yep. And
And a kiss back on the line.
yeah, on the one by one.
Mhm.
Well, the interesting thing here, Barry, too, is as you were talking about in the ES, we had an outside reversal bar yesterday and an inside bar today.
What a setup, eh?
Yeah, so next week you watch the low of this bar or the high of this bar, and whichever gets taken out first will tell you the direction, most likely.
Mhm.
So let's back up a little bit and see what we've done. We had this big sell-off into August 5th. We found support on the full square. We, rallied like a bat out of hell straight into this half square.
Mhm.
So the half square here is obviously key for the upside. That's 20,000. So we got to get above and sit on top of 20,000 to open up the all-time highs.
Mhm.
As long as we're under here, the pressure is going to be down to this full square.
Right.
And that's around, call it 19,165. So those are your levels to watch. Tighter than that, obviously, as we just mentioned, you can watch the high and the low of today's bar, and that can give you a clue as to which direction we're going to go. Some time counts, Barry, you pointed out the 22 high to low from the April low to this recent high was 90. So this high might be significant.
Yep.
That's a 90 count from the low this past April.
Mhm.
So we got to watch that. That's why that inside bar that we're getting today, you can really use that to help you figure out which way we're going to go. Because if that 90 is holding, we should take out the low of this bar and then head on down. But let's see. We'll see come Sunday, Monday. And we're moving into the time frame that Barry highlighted and I've highlighted previously via different methods. This late August, early September window is really important.
Mhm.
Let's jump over to the weekly. Another half square coming into play. This one is a little bit higher, 20,100, but you can see this is on a weekly basis. What I did differently this week, we had the circle, which was great in capturing, broke out of the circle and we go down.
Perfect.
I put this Gartley on,
Mhm.
and look where the low on the plunge on the 5th came.
Mhm.
Right on
The
the
equilibrium line
equilibrium
there.
line.
Yep.
Yeah, right on it. And these Gartleys can hold for a long time and give you really good vibration sometimes when
Mhm.
you catch
Mhm.
them right. And this one, this equilibrium line is has some resonance because look, we spent 3 weeks, banging around this one, about
Mhm.
5 weeks banging
Right.
around this one
Right.
here, and it did catch the low. But again, we want to watch this bar. If we see if we get a push up potentially and a reversal, that outside reversal thing that we were looking for in the ES could set up here too, because this bar is not that big for this week. So that setup is potentially in play. Then let's take a look at the monthly. It's a hell of a monthly bar for August, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, we're going to close conceivably somewhere near the high, and the lows were way down here. The key for the close is the next month bar. Can we stay above 18,800, because then we'll clear it, right? If the low stays above 18.8 on next month on a monthly basis, that means we can push up towards the highs, the all-time highs. But let's see. Right now, this bar is, perfectly crisscrossing it. We are, potentially closing near the top, but we're crisscrossing it. We have to see which way it's going to clear, and that may take a couple months.
Right.
Anything to add on NQs?
No, we're good. I think we have the timing, we have the levels,
Yep.
and it's just waiting for market to open next week.
That's right. Let's jump over to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin had an interesting week. Looky. And we talk about the squares. Look at the low, half square, right? Right here. And then we were having trouble getting through this full square, and there we push.
Yeah, another
And
triangle.
it's pushing after hours still. Yeah, we broke out of the triangle, right? And so the key for this is we want to stay above this 62,000 level. As long as we're above that,
Yeah,
we can push up to the next level, which is, around 68,000.
right. So the next retest is going to be important to see if we can hold above that
Yeah,
square.
do we pull back and hold above that square? If we do, we can keep going. So we had a low, we had a push up, we got a higher low, and now we got a higher high. That's how you start an uptrend.
But overall, if you take it for the year, it hasn't been a big old uptrend, right? It's just been sort of sideways to down.
It's been sideways,
And
yeah.
what's interesting is even up until now, we've been making lower lows, lower highs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering when that's gonna, if we can break to the upside of that, which would be very bullish. Plus, I think where would that ABCD go? The one
Let's
that's
see.
working right now, A being
Yeah,
the low we had
yeah.
in August, right?
Let's see. The interesting thing to me, I look at this pattern, it looks controlled, doesn't it?
Totally.
It looks like somebody has a good grip on it and is just keeping it in this range.
Mhm.
So it would be, up almost 70,000,
Yeah.
69,700.
And still a lower high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's see.
We'll see how it plays out.
I think your midpoint, your full square level is the thing to watch. I mean, that's
Totally
sort of
key.
the balance point for now.
Yeah, for this, you can see this thing has been two squares this whole consolidation, from high to low. It's basically two squares. So this would be the balance point. So we'll see. It's positive as long as we're above that 62,000. It's very positive. All right, let's talk about the commodities now. The grains still searching for a bottom. There are signs, but nothing worth writing home about yet or risking money on. So we got to wait till they form better. The Surprisingly, the softs really kicked up this week. Like sugar's not quite there yet, but I have a square out on a 4 hour at the low, and it had a nice move off of it. So if we get a higher low, you'll see sugar on next week. And I want to talk about cotton actually perked up. Let's look at cotton. I mean, look at this little quiet, 1, 2, 3, 4 day rally this week.
Off of that line too.
Yep, this is the balance point,
Mhm.
right? And the thing I liked about this is, as I said, it was very quiet. And when I show you the higher time frames, the weekly, monthly, you'll see why it looks pretty interesting. This on a 4 hour basis on this last little leg, I had a nice square, 18 by 18. And that caught my attention on, looking at to see how the 4 hour is shaping up. We actually have a higher low there, and on a 4 hour here, you can't see it because it's just been pushing each day higher. We cleared this little high, so we made a higher high. Now the next pullback, if we can make a higher low, we'll have something going on a daily basis. Look at where the low came in. That's time and price.
That's pretty good. I'm glad you brought this up.
It's 90 by 120 right here on a weekly. That's big. You can see we went from this low where I set the square. We went 90 up, right? This is 90 up, and we've come 90 down right here. And we're 120 in time. And we got an up week for the first time in a long time. So
Looks good.
weekly
Definitely time to
basis.
watch it.
Yes, weekly basis. It's saying, hey, that this week looks like a turning point.
Mhm.
Let's look at the monthly. Let me show you the monthly too, and you can see the value here. So look to the left here. So this is kind of, it's been for the last, 10, 20 years, but kind of been a value area.
Yeah, really important level.
So what we want to see and what we might get is if they keep pushing next week, we'll get, the monthly bar to print. I doubt we get an outside reversal bar this month, but we can, and if we close near the high for the month, it gives us a good chance of pushing higher on another monthly bar, like making a higher high next month. So cotton, while it's early, and if you look at the daily, it's been frustrating, right? Because this has basically been sideways for a long time, since the end of 22, November of 22.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we've been going sideways. We had a little deviation up. Now we had a little deviation down, and now it looks like it's ready to get going. The key level on this daily is this full square right here, like around 77, because you can see how long we sat on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
But this one looks interesting. It's very early, but it's one that I saw earlier in the week. It started picking up. Because I just watch the board and then I'll go to the charts when I see something moving because I see cotton was positive Tuesday, positive Wednesday, positive Thursday, and then up a nice bit today. I was like, wow, what's going on there? And then you dive into the charts and you start seeing the squares, you start seeing support, you start seeing these moves, and you say, okay, somebody's buying it for a reason.
Yep.
Don't know what it is, don't know what the news will be, but it's first the pattern, then the news. Anything to add on cotton?
No, I think this is the great reminder, and we'll just have to watch it closely.
Yeah. All right, let's go. The other one, we talked about sugar. Sugar may end up on the show next week. We'll see if we get some follow through in the coming week. And the others, cocoa and coffee, not quite ready. Coffee still in a triangle. Wait for that triangle to break.
Mm-hmm.
On the metal side, Barrie did a great job covering gold and copper. Let's take a look at silver. What's interesting about silver from last week? We saw this breakout. We were right here last week where we were breaking out of this downtrend line, this one by one. And we pushed up, we pulled back, basically 2-day pullback, and then we reversed today, right back up. So we have a higher low right here,
Mm-hmm.
which is right on top of the harmonic balance point, which is nice. What I'd really want to see this coming week is see if we can get over 30.
Right.
Because that's where the full square is. And you'll see it on the higher time frames. You'll see that that's what really has to happen. But the thing we saw, we had a push up, we had a low, we had a higher high, and now we got another higher low.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good start for silver off that low. There's another half square, and we're closing over it. If we can keep the low for next week above 29.74, we'll have cleared the half square. And as you look left, you can see why that's fairly important.
Right.
See these highs here? If we clear those, then it's full square attack, 32. Let's go to the monthly. And remember, this thing's correcting off of, and we called it out in real time. This was 90 weeks, low to high.
Right.
And it looks like, we did a nice correction down, right? Nice ABCD down. So this could be the move out of here. Let's break this downtrend line. Let's first clear the half square, then we break this one by one.
Yep.
And that's how you build a bullish pattern. Let's look at the monthly.
Yeah, the one by one is the key over there.
Yeah. And we talked about this one. That's a perfect pullback, right?
Perfect.
The low is on the full square. Again, if we close near the highs for August and then can open September by another strong push, we'll have a reversal on a monthly basis. So I think silver continues to look good. I wanted to show it again because of the higher low we put in on the daily here.
Yeah.
The reversal today.
Mm-hmm.
Stair stepping and building. Anything else to add on silver?
No, silver looks good. It's still lagging gold, so maybe a correction in gold might, get them linked up again. I mean, that happens every now and then, so that's a possibility.
And this week we've seen some catch up too. Like for example, today gold was up like 1.27% and silver was up 2.81. So we're starting to see a little catch up, but you're absolutely right. It has been lagging gold.
either catch up, by chasing it, or let gold correct and silver might correct less, somehow.
That's true.
You can watch for that.
No,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So that's the last one. Let's jump into our topic with the time we have left, which is the art of analyzing inside bars to create an edge.
Well, that's a good topic. Let's see.
Yeah, let me throw it over to you.
All right, let me try that. All right, so looking at inside bars. So what was the topic? Inside bars and
How they can create an edge for you.
edge, yeah. The way I use them is really in line with levels, the key levels that we have. I mean, we can just take this week. How about that? No picking and choosing then.
Right.
So, well, let's take it off from this level. And this is not even a clean running market. We've had all kinds of sideways, the overnight, and all kinds of crazy going on. But one of the simple ways there's two things you can do with levels. Either, you can work with the reversals, and you can work with like inside bars. And as far as inside bars go, I look at them like it's sort of a pause before the move starts. It's sort of we kind of said these triangle kind of moves are kind of sort of like slack tide. So inside bars are kind of a sort of a pause before the move. And anytime an inside bar shows up, and if it's close to the levels, I watch it very close to see, which side is it trying to break into. Like, for example, like this, remember this big mess?
Yep.
Back in the early part of the month, and it was an expanding triangle. But when it's like that, if it's choppy and sideways and it looks messy, there's no inside bar trading that's happening here unless you really have key levels to go off of. And I would say part of it's more of a art. Otherwise, I think, people would program bots to look at inside bars and just trade them left and right.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that'll be the case. So I'll give you a general idea of how they can be used. If it's really messy and choppy, I don't really jump into the middle of that. You really want to pick and choose coming off of, let's just say, corners. I mean, here's a good example. So this move is 180 degrees up from the low, and it tapped the exact level. Yeah. And we reversed, and the next bar was the inside bar. The bar after that, false break, and you're still watching to see if these two bars get taken out. From the out, the bigger bar, the next two bars were inside, right? So that's one way to use it. If that breaks, you can try to get and trade into that side. Now, when we get to the low, here's another full square, 90 degrees. Can you see that? Yeah.
Yep.
So once you have that, and you have other technical things showing its support, then you're looking for an inside bar. So here's an inside bar right there.
Yep.
Low one, the second bar is inside, and then we move higher.
Right.
And the thing is, your risk is the cool thing about inside bars is your risk is really limited. I mean, right there,
because it's the bottom. If you're taking a bullish position, it's the bottom of that inside bar.
Exactly. So here, where the cross is holding, I mean, it'd be a little bit below that line. That's where you'd want to look at it. Now, 30-minute buying at this kind of level, I don't know if you're going to hold it, but you can go in and out, but you want to mark the levels where the inside bar high and low is, so you can have it for reference till price leaves the area. So, okay, where else can you use it? Well, another one of our favorite ones to look at that first pullback after prices square out or some kind of a cycle expiration. And you can also use them, when we hit key support resistance levels. Like on the weekly, I mean, that's what we're doing right now. We're looking for that first full pullback to complete. Right, Ben? So
that's exactly right.
That's the idea. So here you can see, we came down. So first leg up. So here's the second. And we're looking to see, well, where is it going to get traction? So you want it to be a pullback, actually have a pullback, not just shallow chop. And you can see right there, we had the inside bar coming in. And you just watch to see, well, does the high get taken out? Okay, does high, and you want to, the art comes in, you want to see the high get taken out. You want to be, you know where your risk is always. Once the high get taken out, you want to see, is it going to cover, can it clear key levels? And in this case, it did.
That's a quarter square. Yep.
On that next one, we had another inside bar, and you can see Once high, that took off, it was gone.
Boom.
Boom, it was gone. So it has to do with really watching for the inside bar after it reaches some kind of a key level. So
So
here's another,
the key is inside bar with context.
yeah, within the context. And here is another inside bar. Now, there, if it took the sell, it went up a few down a few points, and even the pullback didn't take out your stop, and it went down a little bit lower, which gives you time to adjust your stop. This is 30-minute, not monthly chart, so you're gonna have to move quick. If you're trading 30-minute, but that's just how it works. So there's another one. There's another inside bar here, but that's above the.
That's in chop, yeah.
That's in chop, and if you take it worked in the sense of an inside bar, but the point is here it wouldn't be the scenario I'm talking about. Here it would have been a false break, right? False break. Take out the other side. False break. The rule is if you take the low of the high bar out, so it'll be that bar. But you can see how the inside bar also worked just fine. Traded lower. So it's along the line. Now, once you see we're building up into some kind of a chop and it's really not picking up, then you want to pull back. Like in here, you don't want to be trading inside bars because it hasn't really cleared. You know what I mean? So that's now we drop back into the sort of the art of things. So by the time we get over here, we know, well, the lows are kind of holding. This is what we talk about, taking out a level, holding above the level. So it's happening. It's starting to happen. Over here, it wasn't. And then we flipped at this point. What this break, the pullbacks after that pullback, it mostly held above. So it's holding above. Now you can kind of focus on, what happens. Can we take a trade off of an inside bar? And pardon me?
I was going to say, Barry, I think this is a good introduction, and we'll revisit this, especially next week in our regular session, because there's a lot of inside bars we're watching.
Yeah, a lot of them. And here's another one just to kind of close off the session here. Here's a key level 55.39. We talked about moving up, coming back to a retest. Very important. If it holds, it's going to go. So that's the kind of place you want to watch for. So here's the inside bar, right? So if you
and
took
then it
that,
goes.
You got the move up onto the other side. So that's the idea. The context would be always,
around a key level.
Around a key level, exactly.
Excellent. Well, listen, everybody, next week is important as most weeks are, but this one is the next couple of weeks. We're in the cycle window. A lot of interesting price actions and time counts. So rest up over the weekend and we'll talk to you next week. Great job, Barry. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, Ben. Good job. And we'll see you guys next week. And don't forget to like, share, and comment.
Exactly. See you later, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.